Okay, so let's just start off with the breathing. So the breathing machine. So just getting the spine flexing and extending. So going in and then coming out. And so you're operating the Dan Shen area. So here, tightening the muscles in the belly, and then here, tightening the muscles in the back. But it's really to get the heart opening and closing. So it's the heart. The heart is the place that would actually operate upon the other person. Your Dan Chen wouldn't. Your Dan Chen is just your sort of anchor. And the heart is the communication center. So as I'm drawing this in, the heart is drawing something in as well. And as I expand here, the heart really blossoms. And it's a good image of like a flower blossoming, a flower opening up is a good image. So here my heart really opens. And then here it just fills up like a morning glory that's gone to sleep for the night. Here it's opened up. And then just start breathing through the small hole in the mouth to sort of make it a bit more difficult. So when you make the small hole, then you can reverse the breathing, because as you suck the air in, that's the phase where the belly actually pulls. And then here, the belly expands as the air goes out. So breathing out and breathing in. And then just into riding horse. So just feel the sacrum. The sacrum should be the dominant part of your consciousness, really. So structurally, it's the most important part of the body. It's the middle, where your upper and your lower join up. And it should very much feel like just a triangle that's sort of suspended in space. So the hip bones are close to it. They don't really touch it. So it's got this sort of fluidity. And it's heavy, so it's hanging. And when it's hanging properly, it feels slightly forwards because your legs have allowed it down into them rather than pushing it up and back, which is what they normally do. Okay. And now let's try that alternating machine. So the machine that we would need to walk. So one fist opening, one hand opening, and the other one closing, and then alternating. So that if you just open one hand and close the other and just alternate, and just let it sort of build up, let something just start happening. So there'll be a turning will be introduced. And it doesn't really matter which way you turn. It doesn't have to be pulling with the fist and pushing with the other hand. It can go the other way. You just want it to build up. Just let the spine start tilting. Yeah. So it'll tend to turn. The side that's making the fist will tend to contract, and the other side will tend to expand. So the feeling is that you're going into the core of the machine, into the heart of the machine. So you're sort of disappearing inside, and then all this sort of detail and energy is actually blooming out of you. But whilst you've got the mind outward, it won't happen. Yeah, because our normal mind is anathema to energy. So the way we look at things, even if you're not being critical, it's still the critical mind. And so energy will just scarper. So we just need to really blinker ourselves, really blind ourselves so that we don't ruin what we're doing. Artists have all sorts of devices that they use to stop their mind interfering and getting in the way of the creative process. Yeah. And just we know we need to do the same thing somehow. So that's what mind in Danchen is really. And so when you go inside, it's as though the heart and the Danchen become the top and the bottom of just one thing. You know, they're very much sort of pulling towards each other. So that's especially when you feel it when you're meditating, when you've got this round shape with your arms, then the heart is like the top of the circle and the Danchen is the bottom of the circle. And so that, you know, meditating with your arms in that position really unifies those 2 points. Okay, so now let's just bring it back. Yeah, so we want to, I mean, the idea is that these exercises, you do them for quite a while, yeah? Remember when I first really started getting into Tai Chi and just decided that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So I said to John, you know, how should I start my practice? And he said, just do this exercise for an hour and a half, yeah? And it was interesting, you know, because it would really go through phases through that hour and a half. You'd get somewhere and you couldn't jump a phase. You had to go through each one to get to the end, yeah? And this is what people don't realize, you know, it's a graduated path. You have to go through the phases. You can't just start doing advanced stuff. Yeah, so if we start off doing this, so let's just start it again and just see the phases. So it starts off like this, yeah? So you've got the one machine. And then that sort of relaxes. It's like you just sort of relax into it. It's almost like your mind wanders. It doesn't really, it relaxes. Because, you know, our concentration tends to be quite fierce and hard. And so it's not right, our concentration. So that we start off doing this. So we've got a machine going. And then it just sort of softens. And it will slowly slip into the alternate one, yeah? And then eventually you'll just find you've now got the turn going. And it's just slipped. It's just become this one. It never quite becomes it. You can feel here, this has got a certain rigidity to it as well. It's very sort of rigid. It's like a march. It's like, you know, like the soldiers marching here. And so it would never really get there if you started off like this, and it would go more into like the figures of eights, yeah. It would soften, all the edges would soften, yeah. And so it starts off one thing, and then if you just relax it, and by that I mean just allow it to intensify in a natural way, rather than allow it to diminish and weaken, then it will slip into the two sides, but more like a figure of eight, more like, ooh, it's slipping and sliding. And what it is, it's you want the machine to turn you. You don't turn. As soon as you start introducing like a willful component to help it, you sort of ruin it. So you want the turning to come from the two sides alternating, rather than because I've imposed a turn with my will. So it is very much from these two muscles just alternating as they work. So it's a machine, but it's an organic machine. It's a machine, but it's not mechanical. It's organic. It's soft and it's oozy and it's always wobbling out of control. It's precarious. Yeah, so my mind is just trying to make sure that it doesn't go out of, that the equilibrium is maintained. So I'm not controlling. If I was controlling it, then I'll be saying, okay, you've got to do this. You know, like you're really just keeping the playing field clean and well marked so that the two teams can come on and play the game. Yeah. You're not even the referee. Yeah. Even that would be too, it's too controlling. Ugh. Okay. And then just back. Yeah, so the test really is just to ask yourself, is it soft? Yeah. And if it's controlling, then it won't be, because when you control something, it's like a rigid, you're turning it into a formula. Okay, and now let's just move side to side. So let's pull with the legs like we used to. So yeah, so I pull with this leg, but then I want to finish the movement of going into this foot by pushing with this leg. So I'm really pushing myself down into this foot. And then there's a natural bounce out of it. Yeah. So I'm pushing and then something bounces out. So I want to feel the emptying leg pushing me even more strongly into the filling leg. It's not enough just to allow gravity to pull your weight down. We just want to use a bit of strength in the legs as well, because if you're really skinny and you don't weigh very much, then you're not going to be able to generate a lot of power just by allowing your weight down. So here I'm pushing myself down the leg. And just feel the pathway. Yeah. I'm not pushing myself like this. It's very much squeezing something through the leg and then just ramming it down here. So as I'm pushing with this leg, I have to really stay in the outside edge, because if I collapse in with the knee like this, then it won't come through and over the top and down. So I have to keep this arch as round as I can. So I don't want to straighten this leg too much. I still want to keep this knee out, yeah. And then you can see that as you change direction, this leg is pulling, but also I'm bouncing out of this leg because I've pushed into it so strongly. Ooh. And then as you go into the leg, just feel how, as soon as my weight starts going into the leg is actually pushing me back. If it wasn't, then I would fall down here. Yeah. So this leg is breaking the fall, if you like, so that I can control, I can go down slowly. So what we want to try and get away from is controlling forces. Yeah. So what I want to feel is that as I'm going into this leg is not just becoming hard in order to stop me from falling down too much. It's producing an opposite flow. And so it's not a holding force that's being introduced into this leg, but a squeeze upwards. If you don't get that, then you won't get the cross energy. So I'm flowing down the leg, but the leg is flowing up against that and up into the opposite hand. Yeah. If this leg is just holding me like this, then there's no energy, basically. There needs to be the two opposing flows for there to be energy. So I sink into this leg, and this leg is squeezing something up through that into the opposite hand. So as I go into the leg, there's very much a flow coming up into the cross energy hand. I go down and something's coming up. And that's very much of the mind. Yeah. So it's a mind that instead of trying to control the situation and be careful, it's encouraging something to move. So here, a bright mind that's allowing this energy to express in the other side of the body. Yeah, so as you go into a leg in Tai Chi, that leg is providing a flow against that movement, if you're doing it right. So I'm sinking into this leg, and the leg is having to provide like a wave of strength, which I don't want to just be something that's just stop it. I don't want to use this leg to stop the flow down. I want to allow the flow down. And the only way I can do that and not fall is if I get another flow coming up that's equal to that. And then I can direct that flow into the opposite hand. So this is what happens in Tai Chi. So when you're moving your weight forwards into the foot, into the front foot, this leg is actually getting stronger and stronger, tenser and tenser as I move into it. And it's this leg that's sending the flow up the body and into the opposite hand. Yeah. So I don't just flop down and just fall into the leg. The leg is growing up, like it's extending through me. And it's just a different mind. This is what people find difficult, to switch from force to energy, which is what we're trying to do really. It just requires a very different mind. And we're so used to using the forceful one that it's difficult for people. I mean, we do use the other one as well, but not normally in situations where you're trying to do something that's difficult and you're trying to learn something. More like when you're playing and having fun, that's when you would be using the mind that's of energy. So we just need to bring that into here. So it's like an enthusiastic mind that says, oh, okay, there you go. I sink into the leg and the leg sends something back up. Okay, so now let's try just the same idea, but now with the feet in bow and arrow posture. So just moving backwards and forwards. But again, I want to go back here and press with this leg. So I'm straightening this leg to push this hip back and really feeling it in the leg. And then if I can keep that leg soft and open, then it will supply energy into the opposite hand. And then I move forwards and I straighten this leg now to get this hip round and really press into this foot. And this foot will then, if I can stay open, just supply energy into this hand. Yeah. So in a sense, the operative word is open. When you're having fun with friends, you're open. Yeah. Anything goes, and it's often you just can tell it's that openness that creates the possibility of energy. Whoa. Nice. I'm going into this leg and something comes up to balance that. So if I can flow into the leg, then it will encourage the leg to supply a flow back. If I'm just pushing myself in with this hard mind that's determined to get there, then there'll be no energy. I go into the leg and there's like a wave of lightness that comes up. And then here, and it's just something that you encourage with the mind. So when you've got that light mind, it's much more likely to happen. So it's like a hopeful mind. Yes, I always say that, about the only thing we all have in common is that we are our own worst enemy. And what it is, it's just the mind. The mind is our own worst enemy. So what we'd like is to yield, so to turn it into our best friend. So then it just has to become like a heart mind rather than a head mind. So I sink into the leg and there's this endless fountain just coming up. And that's because I'm just pressuring this foot all the time by pressing back into it. You just think of flows, think of water. I've got to press something here and then I get into the ground and then this geyser, this spout just comes up through you. And the front leg is the difficult one, because you don't get 100% in there. And the temptation is to lean forwards into it. So you've just got to really push with the back leg, push this round and just feel it just angling down into the front leg. And then just let that front leg just supply this energy. It's like a softness, that warmth that ripples up the inside of the leg into the groin, the Dan Shen, and then across into the other side of the body. Okay, let's try a few on the other side. And it is difficult because, and it is, what makes it difficult is the fact that it requires a different mind. It requires a mind very, very different than the one that you utilize to learn Tai Chi. So when you're learning Tai Chi, you know you're being very sort of concentrating with your mind, and maybe you're a bit anxious because you're not quite sure if you're getting it right. So there comes a point where, you know, through practice, you have to develop it and stop doing it in the way that you did it when you learned it, you know, by rote, by numbers, and just let it flow and let it become really enjoyable and delightful. This is what the thing that John was trying, he'd try and instill a little bit of that when, you know, when we'd learned the short form. And he'd say how, you know, his favorite word is the word delight. And so when you do your Tai Chi, you should come to it with delight, but it should also generate delight. Ooh, this is coming through. And as I sink into this foot, ooh, comes through into this side. Okay. Now let's just bring it to riding horse. Yeah, so when you have that, it's like a mood of enthusiasm, then that's when you sort of touch things lightly, you know, almost like with an air of expectation. So it's very different from the sort of heavy rooting, driving the feet into the ground. So it's almost like you're trying to lift your both feet off the ground at the same time. You'd like to hover. You'd like to hover like a couple of centimeters from the ground. So there's a sense that you're lifting. So it's that sense of expectation of saying, ooh, yeah. That's what, you know, when John used to fire people, you know, without touching them. So it wasn't, he didn't do that with his hands. It was more, yeah. So it's like when you pull the hands back, it sends something from inside you out, yeah. If I push like that, I'm driving myself backwards, yeah. But if I do this, then there's something in me that pops out. And so it's that feeling, I'm drawing my feet up so that something in me will come out and interact with the world in a really light way. And when you're pulling with the feet, it really gets you here. You know, when you're pushing with the legs, it tends to straighten you up and make everything come up to here. Whereas when you pull with the legs, everything comes down and you're inside. Yeah? You become more like an insect with this really rounded out back, which is what we want. Okay, so let's just bring it up. And now let's just try really straightening the legs. So almost locked, but still keep a feeling that your hamstrings are trying to pull your tail down through the legs. So you don't want straightening the legs to stick your bum out. You can get it so that when you straighten the legs strongly, it actually helps it come in. But it's difficult. You can't get it all the time. Yeah. So I want to somehow feel that by extending and straightening, it's actually drawing me down here. This is, I think, so many people now have become disillusioned with yoga. You know, everyone I teach says how much they hate yoga, and it's basically because it's not well taught. So when you extend in yoga and stretch, it tends to go into the ego. So a lot of yoga people are really into their image and how they look, and they're obnoxious. But it doesn't need to do that. Yeah. If you really just extend with the mind down through the heels as you're straightening the legs, then you'll settle here. It won't naturally send you up to here. Okay.